first of all, when I started providing abortions, and I went back to my hometown in Wisconsin, as I mentioned, the physician there who I took over for, he had been providing abortions there since the 40s, in a very safe manner, in a very good facility, in the hospital, calling it a DNC, as I mentioned. And patients were referred to him from all over the place. So there was a network of providers all over the country that did abortions, and many of them, again, were doctors who saw women dying in the wards before abortion was legal, and that's one of the reasons they were doing them in their own practices. When abortion became legal, and some groups started having clinics, etc., and as soon as the anti-abortion movement got involved, actually it was more mainstream for a while. There were many more physicians that did them in their own offices for a while when it first became legal. And then when I was in medical school in the 80s, so not that long after Roe v. Wade, the anti-abortion movement, there's a group called Life Dynamics out of Texas that has been very, very active in intimidating students from the time you begin in medical school. I remember getting a book of cartoons from Life Dynamics when I was a second-year medical student. And these cartoons would show any doctor that did abortions as being marginalized, as being bad. They were laughed at by their colleagues. They were shamed. They were, all these things. So there was this message. There was this group that was saying right from the beginning, as we're progressing through medical school, in very subtle and then very overt ways, if you do abortions, we will. Because this is a shameful, bad thing, we will expose you to your community, we'll make sure patients don't come to you, we will boycott you, we will do everything we can to hurt your practice. There are many physicians that were doing abortions in North Dakota when I first started going up. Not many, there were a handful of doctors doing abortions, but the anti-abortion people would go to them and say, we will harass your children, we will follow your wife to the hairdresser, we will go to your grocery store and picket, we will do anything we can to make you stop doing abortions. So there's been a very active, aggressive movement aimed towards or towards physicians. So that's one reason why it's become really marginalized, and many other physicians who they say they are pro-choice, but they don't want to do the abortions themselves, and they don't want someone in their practice doing abortions because they're afraid it'll hurt their bottom line. To them, money is more important to them than actually caring for that other group of women or group of patients, which is, all the women, basically. And then there's something else that I think is important. You mentioned now about, why aren't they done in every hospital in the operating room? Actually, abortion in the first trimester is a very, very simple procedure. And I really feel like it shouldn't be done in hospitals, because you go into a hospital and there are all the infections and all the bacteria, and it costs a fortune to go into the hospital. There are many reasons I feel it still is important to keep at least first trimester abortions in a clinic setting. However, it could be done much different than it is now and not marginalize us, and put us at risk as much as it does. But an abortion procedure takes 4 or 5 minutes. For the last 18 years, I've been doing abortions for over 20 years. For the last 18 years, I have used only a local anesthetic, a small injection in the cervix when I do an abortion on a woman. Most of my patients talk through it. They get up and walk. As soon as we're done, they're fine. They get off the table. They go into the recovery room. They sit for half an hour. They have something to eat and drink. They leave the clinic smiling. They leave the clinic not cramping, not bleeding heavily. It's a very simple procedure. It's the simplest and the most common minor procedure we do in the United States today. The simplest and the most common minor procedure we do in the United States today. It takes about 5 minutes and is not a horrible, awful, grueling, bloody, disgusting procedure. It is a very simple procedure. And I think the more people understand that, there really isn't a need for a woman to spend $5,000 and go into a hospital and have a DNC to do an abortion. But it could be done in a very different way. The physicians could be doing them in their own clinics. They could be doing them in the exam room. When you have a prenatal visit for one patient, you have somebody with the flu that you're seeing, you have somebody else that you're checking on. This is a family practice doc, let's say. Somebody else you're checking on to see how that arm has set when you set the cast last week, or the orthopeds referred them back for a checkup. And then in the next room, you see a woman for an abortion. It should be that mainstreamed, in my opinion.